Lovely. So just done our check-ins, and we're going to start the sutta for today, which is called Creeping. And I think we already have an expert on that sutta, which is not me, by the way. So this is a discussion where we can all contribute and elucidate and clarify and expand the meaning in ways that may apply to our lives or may not. And it's, in a sense, a fairly deep subject, although the sutta is quite simple, but it's touching on the theme of Kamma, which is, like many things in Buddhism, probably a fairly misunderstood, even controversial subject, especially when it's misunderstood. And so I'm hoping to clarify a little bit about the Buddha's understanding of Kamma and how that can help us in our practice, how we can grasp wrong views of Kamma and how that can hinder our practice, and also draw on one more sutta, which I'll just read out to you, which is the Sivaka Sutta, and it's number Samyutta Nikaya from chapter 36, Vedana Samyutta, number 21. Don't worry too much about the numbers because I'm going to be reading things out. But if our co-hosts can remember and type it in, that's great. So the second one again was Samyutta Nikaya 36, number 21. And the one I'm reading from the main sutta is the Anguttara 10-216, and it's called Creeping. Okay. So I'll start reading, and when we get to Kamma, I might just discuss that theme a little bit before we continue on. So are you sitting comfortably? Yes, no? Ready to hear all about Kamma? Here we go. So monastics, or that could equally mean community, I will teach you an exposition of the Dhamma on creeping. Listen and attend closely. I will speak. Yes, Bhante. That means, yes, Venerable Sir, those monastics replied. The Blessed One said this. And what, community, is that exposition on the Dhamma, of the Dhamma on creeping? Community beings are the owners of their Kamma, heirs to their Kamma. They have Kamma as their origin, Kamma as their relative, Karma as their resort. Whatever Kamma they do, good or bad, they are its heirs. You might recognize that little passage, being quite a famous passage that's chanted regularly in Buddhist monasteries if you've been there. So I guess one question that comes to mind is, does that mean we're basically stuck with our Kamma? Is there no way out? Do we have to experience Kamma in the exact same way that it was created? You know, what exactly does this mean? And the Buddha always said that things happen for a reason, but it's not entirely fathomable as to what those causes are. And in a sense, it can be, it can lead us down rabbit holes, or maybe wombat holes. It can lead us down long, long tunnels to actually think in terms of, you know, trying to look for a reason for the way things are now. So when we try to kind of understand how things are now by second guessing what might have happened to cause this situation, we're actually wasting a lot of time. And that's not how the Buddha really taught the theme of Kamma. He actually called it one of the unthinkables, in Pali achintaya. I can't remember the other four, but basically things that cannot be thought through. So we're wasting our time by trying to do that. And, you know, there's this lovely passage in the suttas where the Venerable Ananda comes to the Buddha, having had some kind of insight, and he says to the Buddha eagerly, he says, oh, the law of Kamma is clear to me now. It's very clear. And the Buddha actually said, Ananda, don't say that. Kamma, the reason things happen, This idea of cause and effect, or paticca samuppada, dependent origination, is deep. It's hard to understand. It is deep, profoundly deep. So even the Buddha wouldn't really go around predicting what has happened to people in the past. Sometimes he had the capacity to do that, but if other people tried to do that, he would usually tell them not to. He would usually say this is not the right kind of approach. But what is the right approach is to understand that the past has gone, right? The past has gone. We may have done things that were wise, skillful, or unwise, unskillful, harmful. We don't really know what happened in the past. We have a memory of it, but we don't really know. But what we can be certain of is the present moment. Things that are happening to us now, our current thoughts, our current intentions. And the important thing is that to know the present moment in terms of our ethical intention, because that's where Kamma is being made. So it's more helpful to think about Kamma as what we're doing now, whether we're motivated by greed, hate, and delusion, which are going to create more suffering for ourselves and others, which are already creating more suffering for ourselves, right? Every time greed, hate arise in our mind and we have intentions based on that. Or we can have ethical intentions of their opposites, of generosity or letting go instead of greed, right? Of love and kindness instead of hate. And also non-harm. And all of these things, of course, directly undermine delusion. And sometimes we might lose faith a little bit in these laws of karma because we expect the results to be immediate. I've heard many people say, and I guess I've thought it myself from time to time, I do everything the best I can. I do everything right. I'm kind as much as I can. Why am I suffering? How come all these people in the world that don't seem to have good intentions seem to be happy? They have a lot of wealth, or they have, a lot of success in some worldly way. How come they don't seem to be suffering from their deeds? And one of the reasons is that, of course, we don't really know whether other people are suffering or whether they're tormented at night with a guilty conscience. It can't be measured by material gain, of course. Happiness is never really correlated to that, providing our basic needs are met. I'm not promoting poverty or glamorizing that at all, but I have met people living in much less fortunate conditions materially who seem to have a lot of inner joy due to their spiritual practice or a sense of belonging or whatever it may be. And the other reason it's not very helpful to analyze things, in terms of the effects, expecting good effects, is that sometimes results are not immediate. Sometimes results take time. And it's that drop by drop, the jar gets full, constantly trying to align our intentions with non-ill will, with compassion, with non-harming, with generosity, letting go, non-ownership, and so many other good intentions, gratitude, a willingness to learn, to hear the Dhamma, to keep on turning our minds towards the Dhamma again and again and again. And it's over time that these good intentions accumulate and start to yield their effects. So the main point is not to worry about results, but to focus on what you're doing now and to have the confidence that if you are planting good seeds, good intentions, the results are bound to come. It's only a matter of patience and time. Yeah. So, there's a lovely sutta by the Buddha. It's actually a verse in the Dhammapada, and I don't remember where this is, but he said, whenever one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows like a shadow that never departs. The opposite is true too. I think there's something about whenever one speaks or acts with an impure mind, it's like suffering follows you like two heavy bullock carts or something like that, or like the cart that follows the ox. But it's nicer to think about the pure mind and the happiness following us, because we already have, unwholesome intentions. That's already there. But every step we take in the Dhamma, in a sense, is a progress, right? So we're actually moving that, we're actually creating conditions for happiness to start following us to the point where it's always with us as an inner sense of ethical integrity, of goodness, of joy. And It's important to rejoice in the good karma we're making. I have this little quote by the Dalai Lama that I just want to read because I found it recently. I was looking for it for a while. And this is an example of the kind of view or way of thinking that can help us to create good karma. It's quite a famous one. I'm sure you know it, but I'll read it out. He says, every day, think as you wake up. Today, I'm fortunate to be alive. I have a precious human life. I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to use all my energies to develop myself, to expand my heart out to others, to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. I'm going to have kind thoughts towards others. I'm not going to get angry or think badly about others. I'm going to benefit others as much as I can. So this is a very good example of wholesome ethical intentions, wholesome ethical action, which is basically the Buddha's own definition of Kamma. Chetanam aham kamma vadami, the Buddha said, which means intention is karma, I say. Intention is karma. So karma is not fate. I want that to be very clear before we go on to the next part. So we're not actually predicting somebody's past karma by the situation they're in now. There are many causes for things that arise in the present, and karma is only one of them. So I'm going to get onto that as well in a bit. But our intention or our focus should be on the karma we're creating now. Yeah. All right. So if that's clear, we can continue, and we'll have questions and discussion along the way. I'll just continue with the sutta for now. So here, someone destroys life. They are murderous, bloody-handed, given to blows and violence, merciless to living beings. They creep along by body, speech, and mind. Their bodily karma is crooked. In other words, action, right? Karma is action or ethical intention. Their verbal karma is crooked, and their mental karma is crooked, the way they think, the way they intend. Their destination is crooked. Their rebirth is crooked. But for one with a crooked destination and rebirth, I say, there is one of two destinations, either the exclusively painful hells or a species of creeping animal. And what are the species of creeping animals? The snake, the scorpion, the centipede, the mongoose, the cat, the mouse, and the owl, or any other animals that creep away when they see people. Interesting. Something to do with the conscience there. We have to hide away. Thus, a being is reborn from a being. One is reborn through deeds. When one has been reborn, contact affects one. It is in this way, I say, that beings are the heirs of their karma. And then there are some other examples with the same passage afterwards. I'll read one more fully and then the others in part. So someone takes what is not given. Someone steals, in other words. Their bodily karma is crooked. They creep along by body, speech, and mind. Their bodily karma is crooked. Their verbal karma is crooked. Their mental karma is crooked. Their destination is crooked. Their rebirth is crooked. But for one with a crooked destination and rebirth, I say, there's one of two destinations, either the exclusively painful hells or a species of creeping animal. And what are the species of creeping animals? The snake, scorpion, centipede, mongoose, cat, mouse, and the owl, or other animals that creep away when they see people. Thus, a being is reborn from a being. One is reborn through one's deeds. When one has been reborn, contact affects one. That means contacts any of the 6 sense doors. So the contact of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, and also the contact of the mind, so thoughts, etc. Usually thoughts about that 5 sense world. It is in this way, I say, that beings are the heirs of their karma. And the other causes for such a crooked destination are that one engages in sexual misconduct, speaks falsehood, speaks divisively, speaks harshly, indulges in idle chatter. By the way, this doesn't mean for 5 minutes or just occasionally. Don't worry. You're not all going to like exclusively painful hells, not at all. But I think this is talking about somebody whose whole life is in this sort of direction. Is full of longing, has a mind of ill will and intentions of hate, holds wrong view and has an incorrect perspective thus. So this little passage is interesting because this is the definition of wrong view, the kind of preliminary wrong view before we have at least an intellectual understanding of right view. So this is the wrong view that leads to bad actions, basically. There is nothing given. Oh, it's done ... All right. Well, I'll try and remember the bits in between because there's a lot of suttas on this. So it's something like there's nothing given, there's no mother and father, there are no ascetics and Brahmins. Yeah, that one's there. There's nothing given. What else is it? Does anyone have that passage somewhere? Maybe this is where we need Casey.
Rebirth and beings born.
Yeah, there's no spontaneous
parents of
reborn
spontaneous,
being.
yeah.
There's no mother and father. It's basically things that would lead to a lack of gratitude. Look at 10.211. Yeah, do you have that somewhere that you can paste that passage? That would be really, really nice. There's nothing given. Yeah. Let's have a look. There are in the world no ascetics and Brahmins of right conduct and right practice, who, having realized this world and the other world for themselves by direct knowledge, make them known to others. So we're going to get the whole passage, but the part that I just read out was a lack of faith, basically, that there is such a thing as enlightenment, that there is such a thing as the path, and that it's possible to realize the fruits of the path. Yeah. So this kind of mundane wrong view, which we can call it, is leading to a sense of not really appreciating cause and effect, not really appreciating karma, not having a sense of gratitude that you didn't come into this world alone, but there are many beings supporting your existence, and also that there's this possibility to make an end of suffering. Yeah, so here we go. Thank you so much. There's nothing given, nothing sacrificed, nothing offered. This is the important bit. There is no fruit or result of good and bad actions. So this is wrong view. And when people try to teach a kind of Buddhism that actually omits this idea of Kamma, which is actually something that's observable in the very present moment, right? If we have thoughts of kindness, we feel one way. If we have thoughts of ill will, we feel another way. And the more we have thoughts of kindness, the more likely it is that we act on those thoughts with words and deeds of love and kindness. So to actually take out Kamma from Buddhism is to basically lose a major part of what the Dhamma is, which is the laws of nature, what creates suffering and what leads to happiness. So again, karma is not fate. It's not something that's predestined. It's something that's proactive and empowering because we can actually be creating good karma, making steps towards our liberation every single moment that we have such a fortunate birth. Yeah. And sometimes every moment that we remember. And that's the role of Sati Sampajanya, that we have to remember to align our behaviors with goodness. So this is part of wrong view, that there is no fruit or result of good and bad actions. Then why bother trying? Yeah, you can do whatever you like and it makes no difference. There is no this world, no other world. So that's, again, wrong view in regards to rebirth. There is this world, there is the other world. That's preliminary right view. So again, that's the results of our karma playing out in future lives, not just in this life, not just in the next moment or the next 10 years, but in other existences too. There's no mother, no father. Again, the sense of no one to feel grateful for. There are no beings spontaneously reborn. There are in the world no ascetics and Brahmins of right conduct and right practice who, having realized this world and the other world for themselves, by direct knowledge, make them known to others. Okay. So I'm going to continue reading the sutta, then I'll start to come to some of the questions here, if that's okay with you. So we've just gone through the wrong view as an example of somebody who, I think it's talking about it here as an example of the kind of view that can lead us to not taking due care around our ethical intentions. So these views are not so conducive to living ethical lives. Yeah. So for one with those wrong views, one creeps along by body, speech, and mind. Their bodily karma is crooked, etc. Their verbal karma and their mental karma is crooked. Their destination is crooked. Their rebirth is crooked. Thus, a being is reborn from a being. One is reborn through one's deeds. When one's been reborn, contact affects one. It is in this way, I say, that beings are the heirs of their karma. Monastics or community beings are the owners of their karma, the heirs of their karma. They have karma as their origin, karma as their relative, karma as their resort. Whatever karma they do, good or bad, they are its heirs. And then we go into the positives. This is always the really nice part, isn't it? Because the first part's like, oh gosh, this sounds really scary and really sad. But the next part has a completely different effect on our bodies and minds. So see if you can be embodied and listen to this. Here, having abandoned the destruction of life, someone abstains from the destruction of life, with the rod and weapon laid aside. Conscientious and kindly, one dwells compassionate towards all living beings. One does not creep along by body, speech, and mind. Their bodily karma is straight, verbal karma is straight, and their mental karma is straight. Their destination is straight, their rebirth is straight. But for one with a straight destination and rebirth, I say, there's one of two destinations, either the exclusively pleasant heavens or eminent families, such as those of affluent Kaityas, affluent Brahmins, or affluent householders, families that are rich with great wealth and property, abundant gold and silver, treasures, belongings, abundant wealth and grain. Such a being is reborn from a being. One is reborn through one's deeds. When one has been reborn, contact affects one. So here you can see that contact of the senses is much more pleasant. In this way, I say, that beings are the heirs of their karma. And the same holds for the other precepts. Having abandoned the taking of what is not given, someone abstains from taking what is not given. Someone abstains from sexual misconduct, abstains from false speech, from divisive speech, from harsh speech, abstains from idle chatter, is without longing, is of goodwill, holds right view, and has a correct perspective thus. And again, this is the right view that is the kind of first step towards noble right view on the path. So this is the right view that all of us can try to align ourselves to, even before we're stream winners. Yeah, so this is not the right view of the Aryas who've actually seen karma and seen suffering deeply, but the right view that is a good perspective, a correct perspective that's going to help us to live ethical lives. So the right view at the beginning of the Eightfold Path is there is what is given. Aha, I need the full one again. There is what is given, there is what is sacrificed, there is what is offered. There is fruit and result of good and bad actions. There is this world and the other world. There is mother, there is father. There are beings spontaneously reborn. That means in different realms, And there are in the world ascetics and Brahmins of right conduct and practice who, having realized this world and the other world for themselves by direct knowledge, make them known to others. They do not creep along by body, speech, and mind. Their bodily karma is straight, their destination is straight, their rebirth is straight. Thus, a being is reborn from a being. One is reborn through one's deeds. When one's been reborn, contact affects one. It is in this way, I say, that beings are the heirs of their Kamma. Community or monastics, beings are the owners of their karma, the heirs of their karma. They have karma as their origin, karma as their relative, karma as their resort. Whatever karma they do, good or bad, they are its heirs. This, monastics or community, is the exposition of the Dhamma on creeping. So there we go. Is that interesting? Yeah? I feel sorry for the little cats and the mongoose. Apparently in Chinese, there are only 4 animals. In the Agamas, that's the sort of Chinese parallel text, there's only the snake, the mouse, oops, the cat again, and the fox. I mean, they are a little bit furtive, aren't they, these cats? Sneaking around and living in fear. I mean, sometimes we look at the animal realm and we think, oh, they're so cute, they're so fluffy. But honestly, if you really look, I always think, especially at birds, you know, they can't eat for a moment. They're like this, right? We think that's really cute, but they're like totally on edge about being able to eat without being, you know, prey for a larger bird or maybe for a human being. So we don't want to go to these animal realms, and this is how not to do that. So I'm going to say a bit more on karma too, but I'd like to open up for some discussion first. And thank you for being patient. So one of the questions coming is, and please do ask these, you know, using your voice, because it's lovely to hear other people's voices. It brings it alive, especially for me, and I can kind of tune in better to your well, to you as a human being. You know, I see your body language, I hear the tone of your voice, and it's a little bit more alive. So, but the first question is, could you kindly expound on what is meant by full of longing? How should one train if they feel isolated? If they feel isolated and are full of longing to belong, be part of spiritual community where they could train joyfully in social and communal harmony, higher virtue, higher heart, higher wisdom. Yeah. I don't think that's a negative longing. I don't think that's what the Buddha's talking about here. So rest assured that that is a wise intention rather than a longing. Of course, if you're feeling very isolated and you're kind of longing for friendship, longing for company, again, I think that's a very human need. I mean, it's sometimes a physiological need. I'm sure you know how isolated I became during COVID. And I love solitude. The first year of that for me was wonderful. But after about a year of not actually being around people one-to-one, I could go on a walk by then, you know, and see people, but I didn't have actual company. My whole nervous system became dysregulated physiologically, and there was nothing I could do. And I realized then that we're animals, we're relational beings, and we need one another to regulate, to co-regulate. And I remember, you know, sometimes talking to Ajahn Brahm on Zoom, actually weekly. He was incredibly supportive at that time. And he'd say, but I'm here, you know, you've got me. And I'd be like, I know you're there, but I can't feel it. You know, it's like I hear the words, but I'm not feeling the difference because he's not actually physically present. So I do understand. And I'm trying to normalize this by saying that we have certain biological needs and they shouldn't be stigmatized. They shouldn't be feared. You know, they are natural human needs. So I do think it's wise to seek spiritual community. It's necessary to the spiritual path. The tricky part of this is that we panic when it's not there, right? We create suffering for ourselves when it's not there. We might even consolidate a sense of poor me, I'm all alone, nobody wants me, I don't belong. And we have to be a little bit careful of that, because that is kind of adding suffering to the suffering. So I think to try to relate to that as a spiritual friend, or as you'd wish a spiritual friend to relate to that, to try and be your own spiritual friend towards those feelings, first of all, and then to actively work to seek spiritual community, which you're doing by being here. And I know it's not the same as being in person, but it is something, because you're hearing the Dhamma, you're feeling seen, I hope, you're feeling at least that you belong for this time. None of us belong once the Zoom's off, because nobody's here then. So you belong as much as anyone else, right? So yeah, I don't think that's the kind of longing that leads to an unfortunate rebirth. I think the kind of longing that the Buddha's talking about is usually craving for sensual pleasures, craving for pleasures of the five sense world, pleasant sight, sounds, smells, taste, touches, just purely for the kind of what he calls amisa sukha, which is a kind of lower happiness. It's a kind of coarse happiness, and it's not where our true happiness lies. So remember, when we're talking about sort of things like heaven and hells and karma and good and bad, it's not so much a judgment. It's more a guidance as to where we can find happiness and which path will lead to more suffering. So the caveat with this whole sutta really is to please don't panic. It's not one thought or one bad action that's leading you to these places, or even hundreds. It's the general direction, the general momentum of your lives. So anyone who's trying their best to have good and wholesome intentions is surely going to keep on going from brightness to brightness, from a fortunate rebirth to an even more fortunate rebirth. And I think as well, this sutta points to the idea of being transparent, being open, having integrity, not creeping about, not trying to get away with things you don't think you should really get away with, being real, being honest, about whatever we do. So we can make mistakes, but we're open, we're honest, and we constantly try to align our lives with the path. So everybody here is surely going to get a good rebirth, if you have to have one at all. Hopefully you won't. Now, does anyone want to speak? Madeline, I don't know, did you want to ask your question? Or if you don't unmute, I will just read it out. Sometimes people are a bit shy to speak. Yeah, read it out. Yeah. Why do you think the Buddha said that a higher rebirth would be to have wealth and riches, etc., when to me that feels like it might be stress and suffering and needing to cling to those things? Why didn't he say a higher rebirth would be to be a renunciate? Yeah, that's an interesting question. And the question of whether it might bring stress and suffering, it is, you're right that it can lead to clinging, because we can get used to a certain level of comfort, right? And then we almost feel like we can't do without it. We get accustomed to that. But I think he's not so much talking as far as what we do with our good conditions, but more just pointing towards the effects of good karma. That one of them is that you have everything, all your material needs easily met. Because if we do relate to that well and wisely, then that should relieve a lot of suffering. It's when we cling to it, when we become proud because of it, when we become kind of too accustomed, even arrogant because of it, it's that relationship at that time that will create bad karma out of the good karma. But certainly there's a lot of suffering in poverty, right? And in not getting our needs met. I mean, I've been in many so-called developing countries where actually, there was a lot of inspirational spiritual practice happening, but there were also people living in such dire conditions of poverty that the idea of introspection and taking time to sit on your bum and practice was really a luxury and a privilege that they didn't have, because their whole life was about basically, where is the next meal going to come from? Is the father of the family coming back? Maybe he's got a dangerous job, or or maybe the husband's an alcoholic. a lot of problems come from poverty, and a lot of crime as well is often not so much due to a person's lack of ethics as to the situation of being in poverty. Like a mother, for example, who needs to feed the kids, and it's a choice between stealing a loaf of bread or letting the kids go hungry. I mean, what is the ethically correct thing to do in that situation? Sometimes you don't have the privilege of abstaining from stealing if you're poor, So I guess he's just pointing to the results of good karma, like if you're generous. Somewhere else in the suttas, it actually says that generosity leads to being rich, stinginess leads to being poor. So it's not the only thing that it leads to, right? It's not that, you wouldn't also have spiritual benefits of good karma, but this is just one of the benefits. Yeah. I hope I'm making sense. I realize I'm a bit tired today, so I'm not sure how well that came out. I also think in the Buddha's day, there weren't such things as oligarchs in quite the same way. I mean, there were kings, but they were usually sort of petty kings, like probably more like the rich person of the area. And they sort of called them kings or princes. But I think the way a lot of people live today is probably even more luxurious than the way the kings in India used to live. So, the gap between rich and poor is even greater today, I would say, than at any other time. And we do see a lot of very unskillful uses of wealth, and it's even a tool of oppression, right? And contributes to global climate crisis, etc., etc. Okay, I'm coming to Suzanne. Hi.
Hello. Could you talk about being born as a human? Is like actually I've heard the best opportunity to practice the Dhamma and to be able to end the path. Like, why is that?
Why as a human? Well, I think one obvious thing is that we have a sort of fairly, maybe not even, but we have suffering and happiness. Whereas in some of the other realms, such as the hell realm, obviously, I mean, it actually talks about it here, doesn't it, as being exclusively, what does it call it? Exclusively suffering or something. Where's that? I don't find it now. But in the hell realms, we suffer. Basically, there's a lot of agony, a lot of torment, a lot of remorse, most probably. And you can be trapped there for an incredibly long time. In the Deva realm, it's the opposite. In the heavenly realms, the beings are so happy and blissed out all the time that they're like, oh, this is so nice. Look at me. I'm so fortunate. I'm so happy. That's because of all my good karma. And they get completely complacent and don't really have this perspective of the suffering that comes and goes, right? The only time they really suffer, and they suffer intensely at that time, is when the Deva realms, or when they start to fall from those Deva realms. So the body eventually starts to die, and they think, oh my goodness, what's happening to me now? I thought I was eternal, I thought I was omniscient. And then they start to fall away from those realms, and there is going to still be, bad karma there. They are still going to have to face the consequences of previous unskillful ways of behaving. So quite often it seems from the suttas that people can actually go from the Deva realms straight into the hell realms again. Whereas the human birth is a very fortunate and noble birth, because you have a kind of a share of happiness and suffering, enough to be motivated through happiness and also through the suffering to find an end. I think another reason is that we have the five senses, but we also have the opportunity to understand what spiritual happiness is as well, through hearing the Dhamma, through meeting the Dhamma as human beings. So we have that kind of contrast, and we can start to explore where true happiness lies. The Deva realms are still a little bit on the sensual side, although they make very good karma by usually a lot of generosity, etc. They still might get carried away by that. So yeah, the human realm, I mean, it's hard to say, isn't it? Because we're humans now, we can't like necessarily directly compare it to previous lives. But I think that the opportunity to hear the Dhamma and to understand the Dhamma and to be able to apply it to our lives, I mean, we're able to practice the whole Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path includes things like right livelihood, right speech, right action. I don't know how much the Devas work. Maybe they don't really have a livelihood. I don't know. We can practice all these 8 limbs. So the human birth is very wonderful. Yeah. Sean, can I come to you?
Hello.
Hi.
Just a couple of things. When we were talking about karma,
Yeah.
it came to mind that I just had a thought in my mind that actually I'm in a fortunate position, and is that a result of some good karma? But then there was part of me kind of comparing myself to someone in, you know, a very similar situation, who I think is suffering maybe in more ways. And I was just thinking, is that me getting judgmental, and is it positive? So is it a good thing to reflect on the fact that, I mean, it felt slightly uplifting, like as in quite made me have more gratitude. Is that, is that a good thing to do or not?
Hey, it's not to other people. I don't know. It depends whether it's
not so much. Sorry, just to start to interrupt, but wasn't just the comparing.
Yeah.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah, I think I got it. I think it's incredibly useful to have gratitude for the situation we're in and to, you know, acknowledge that this is probably the result of some very good karma. There's another lovely sutta by the Buddha which talks about, you know, people who are born into brightness, and they can either go from brightness to darkness or brightness to brightness. And the person that's born into brightness, in other words, you have reasonably good health, you know, you're able to earn a living, maybe you've got a reasonably good mind or some skills or interests. Maybe you have a nice family, a loving family, or a relatively okay family. All of these things are the result of good karma, but some people go from brightness to darkness by thinking, oh, I really wanted more, you know, or I'm really not grateful for what I have, and other people have more than me. You know, it's our attitude to things, whereas some people, they acknowledge that, yes, they have wealth or whatever, and there are people suffering, but instead of feeling guilty, they think, okay, let me share my wealth with others, right? So it's what we do with what we have that's important. We don't really know whether it's due to good or bad karma. I mean, it is good karma. The Buddha said this clearly again and again, to be reborn as a human being. And that's one of the arguments Bhante Sujato makes around the myth of being born female, because there's some horrible misogynistic myths, beliefs and views going around in Buddhism that say, oh, it's unfortunate to be reborn as a female, right? Well, the fact is the Buddha said that all human beings can be enlightened, and that the human rebirth is a very fortunate rebirth. It doesn't matter what gender you are, it doesn't matter what sexuality you are, it doesn't matter what color you are, it doesn't matter what background you have, or whether you're, you know, physically able or you have different abilities or neurodiversity, whatever. The human rebirth is a good rebirth, especially if we're able to hear the Dhamma, have faith in the Dhamma, and practice the Dhamma. So to reflect in that way is wonderful. And that's why I read that beautiful passage by the Dalai Lama, where he said, each day when you wake up, reflect. You know, I'm fortunate to have this human birth. I have the opportunity to do good, to be a source of happiness for the world, to practice for my enlightenment. I have that opportunity. You know, we don't know if we're going to get that opportunity again. So yeah, I think there is some, it's always good to observe society, observe the way people's lives are and the way their behavior is and what sort of effects that has, but see if we can just do it with a sort of open mind, more like a hypothesis than a judgment, I think, and always bring it back to oneself. You know, like, okay, so this person's doing that, doesn't look very skillful to me. How can I be sure that I don't do that? I do something different. Or if a person's doing something very beneficial, very wholesome, very skillful, they're able to give up more, they're able to take more time for retreat. Okay, can I also take more time for retreat myself? I think in that way, by sort of, you know, observing the people around us, that can be helpful. But if we go into sort of trying to judge or predict, that's very unhelpful. I remember one of our volunteers once said something that I found quite horrible, actually. They said something like, don't you think, Venerable, that if people are poor, it's because they don't have good intentions? Like, I have really good intentions, that's why I've got lots of money. And I was just like, but, well, where did your money come from? And they actually said, well, my family gave me some of it. And I just thought, gosh, that kind of view doesn't lead to compassion. So any view that doesn't lead to compassion is usually not right view. Whereas if you would think, okay, well, there are people who are poor, let me see how I can help them. I'm not in that situation, but this could change. If I were in that situation, how would I feel? What would, you know, this is making good karma with the good karma you have. The other passage I wanted to read, which I'll do in a second, is that we cannot predict, like I said at the beginning, we can't say that our situation now is due to this or that action from the past. That's unfathomable, unknowable, unthinkable. And the other passage basically says that everything we experience now is due to one of eight reasons, karma being only one. So maybe it's a good time to read that out. What do you think? Yeah? All right. So this means that we don't judge people because we don't know. Like if I had to think, sometimes I have met people who've said to me, you know, maybe your chronic gastric condition is due to past karma. And I find that so annoying because I know exactly what caused it in this life. And actually, I mean, it was physiological causes. I was doing noble things. I was meditating a lot, but I was living in a country where the food hygiene is not the same. My body's not, you know, made for that climate, made for that kind of food. And the cause was clearly physiological. So we have to be very careful there. So here we go. I'll read a part of this one out. This is the one from the Vedana Samyutta, Samyutta Nikaya 36, number 21. Master Gautama, so that's the Buddha. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who hold such a doctrine and view as this. Whatever a person experiences, whether it be pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, all that is caused by what was done in the past. What does Master Gautama say about this? Okay, so then the Buddha replies, some feelings, Sivaka, arise here originating from bile disorders, which is a very bad translation for pitta, which basically means an imbalance in the fire element, let's say, or in the metabolism, let's say. And some feelings arise here originating from bile disorders one can know for oneself. And that is considered to be true in the world. Now, when those ascetics and Brahmins hold such a doctrine in view as this, whatever a person experiences, whether it be pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, all that is caused by what was done in the past, they overshoot what one knows by oneself, and they overshoot what is considered to be true in the world. So just our basic intuition, right? Our basic knowledge of what caused that disease. Therefore, I say that this is wrong on the part of those ascetics and Brahmins. So that's the first cause or the first reason for what we experience now is basically diseases arising from an imbalance. I mean, it's strange. I've studied Indian medicine, so I kind of understand this in a bit more depth, but it's difficult to explain that principle. It basically means anything related to the metabolic system, the digestive system in particular, and the way that that's working. And so, yeah, basically physiological causes. So the other ones come now. Some feelings, Sivaka, arise here originating from, again, terrible translation, phlegm disorders. It means kapha, which means kind of anabolism. No, can't say that. What is it? Metabolism, anabolism? Anyway, too much water and earth element. And then originating from wind disorders, that's vata. Originating from an imbalance of the three. So an imbalance of these functional parts of the body. Produced by change of climate, that's number 4. Produced by careless behavior, number 5. Caused by assault, number 6. Is that number 6 or number 7? And produced as the result of Kamma. That some feelings arise here produced as the result of Kamma. One can know for oneself, and that is considered to be true in the world. Now, when those ascetics and Brahmins hold such a doctrine in view as this, whatever a person experiences, whether it be pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, all that is caused by what was done in the past. They overshoot what one knows by oneself, and they overshoot what's considered to be true in the world. Therefore, I say that this is wrong on the part of those ascetics and Brahmins. So there you go. So how was that then? So the Vata, Pitta, Kapha, the 3, we call them doshas. Doshas are food. And then imbalance of the 3, so that's the 4th. Climate is the 5th. Carelessness is the 6th. Assault is the 7th. And Kamma is the 8th. So isn't that a relief to know that you weren't assaulted because of Kamma, you were assaulted because of assault? Right? It's not that you died in a hurricane because of Kamma or because of group Kamma. It's just that the climate is being, I mean, not only is it unpredictable anyway, but at the moment it's in a catastrophic state of dysregulation. So climate is one of the causes for things that happen in the here and now. So anyway, I feel like I'm not very clear today, but I hope this is making sense. Maybe it's just a very deep topic. But I hope it's making some sense. Is there any more comments or questions around that? Okay. So careless behavior, especially of oneself, wouldn't it come under Kamma as well? I suppose here we're talking about Kamma as ethical intention. So careless behavior, yes, you could say it's a lack of mindfulness, but it might not be kind of ethically potent in that sense. You didn't mean to do it, right? You were just kind of lost mindfulness in that moment. So, I mean, the fact that it's listed as something separate, I think, means that there's a category for that on its own. It's kind of saying that, look, if somebody trips over, it's because of carelessness in that moment. It's not because of something they did in the past, right? It's because of carelessness right then and there. It's not because of past Kamma. I think that's what it's saying, because in this sutta it talks about all that is caused from the things we've done in the past, right? So, yeah. I mean, the point is we can't always really know either, but it's helpful to hold the perspective that not everything that happens to us is Kamma. What we do with it is Kamma. We're creating Kamma in the present moment, but it's not helpful to speculate back to the past. We can definitely learn from being careless that, okay, we need more mindfulness, right? I need to take more care. I need to have more compassion for myself, not be in a hurry, take a deep breath, etc. But yeah, to think of it in terms of, oh, this happened to me because, I don't know, I was having a bad thought, or because, in the past I tripped somebody up or something. That's not very helpful perspective. Yeah. Anything else on this theme? I think a lot of the practice at the stage before we really see through Kamma, we really understand Kamma and the way this world works, a lot of the practice is developing helpful perspectives. or perceptions that will actually help us to lead really ethical lives and create good conditions for our practice. Okay. I feel like giving the gift of community would help alleviate the longing. How do we give others what we want skillfully? How do you give the gift of community other than by being part of it? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, you are giving the gift of community by showing up here, right? You're valuing it. You're putting your energy into what you believe in. Yeah. Giving the gift. I mean, it's a nice perspective because it sort of goes against wanting community rather than wanting and thinking I need. It's like you play a more active role in creating community. Maybe that's what you mean. I think that's a very skillful way because it's not only your own longing or your own sense of isolation, or sometimes we feel we don't belong. Many people feel the same, right? I think it's so important when we're going through some suffering, especially that sort of suffering, which sort of tends to isolate us in our own little world, to remember that many people feel this way. That's what I understand, from the Four Noble Truths when the Buddha said there is suffering, and suffering is universal. So the way you feel when you're, longing for community, many other people feel too. So I think, trying to create that community around you is definitely a very beautiful, noble act, but to do it without expecting results, to do it without wishing to, get rid of the longing, but just to focus on the beauty of that intention and the generosity of that intention and rejoice in that itself. I've had to do that here. Like, I've had to acknowledge that maybe I'll never manage to create a community, but I can have fun trying, right? I can have fun knowing that I'm doing something with good intentions that's going to help people, even if no one comes. And then when even one or two people come, I get very, very happy. So try to lower expectations, but just do it because it's a good thing to do. Can I come to Sean? Hi.
Hi again. So just wondering as well, when it talks about creeping, you did touch upon it.
Yeah.
I just wonder, what's the relevance of them being creeping animals and the whole word of creeping? Because it says something about Dharma and creeping, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's an interesting sutta, isn't it? I haven't heard that before. Let me have a little look at the footnote. 2177, I think it is. I mean, there is that thing about being furtive, being kind of on the lookout. What did it say? Something like they creep away when they see people. So I think some of that is the kind of guilty conscience, because they're crooked. It relates to this idea of being crooked. So you're not straight. Like, people who are straight and upright and morally kind of morally upright, they can show up anywhere in front of anyone because they have this inner sense of confidence. Whereas people who are not, people who have something to hide, they have to kind of creep around or try and hide certain aspects of their behavior because they know it's not quite right. Yeah. So I think it's related to that. And I mean, in this sutta, it does seem to connect the bad rebirth to rebirths as snakes and scorpions, etc. So I think they're just examples. I mean, the Buddha doesn't usually use specific examples, but it's quite an evocative image to me, this idea of creeping rather than sort of standing upright and being confident in oneself. It could also be that, animals creep around, like they go on 4 legs usually, or many legs. And that's just a kind of metaphor for the animal realm. But let me have a little look. 2177. If I got it right. Yeah, it doesn't say anything. It just says it means an exposition of the Dhamma that has creeping as its subject matter. But yeah, the next note says something like, in doing that action, they creep forward, creep around, and wriggle around. So maybe it's like you have to kind of hide your action, you know, you have to kind of squirm and sort of try and manipulate to get your way, that kind of creepy.
Yeah, I think
I
someone
mean, we
just
must
said,
all recognize that in ourselves, I'm guessing.
sorry, yeah, I was going to say, it made me think, you know, if someone say the term, someone's creepy,
Oh,
something
yeah.
a bit off and weird about them.
Yeah, that's right. They're a bit creepy. They give you the creeps because you can't quite get where they're coming from, or you can tell something's off, but you're not quite sure why. And it's like creepy. Yeah, that's a good associated word. Someone else says, so they're creeps. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, there's a message I missed in the chat. I'll come to that. We might not get through everything, but I'll come to people who haven't yet asked a question. I think we can only focus on what we can give. We can't control others. Sadhu. That's very good. Absolutely. Yeah, we can only focus on what we can give. We can't control others. Even with loving kindness practice, sometimes we think, oh, I have this enemy, they don't like me very much. Maybe I should send them metta. And, you know, maybe that's understandable. But the reason to send metta is to overcome the hate in our heart. It's to free ourselves from ill will. It's not to try and change a person so that they're like us. It might come as a side effect, but that's not the purpose of the metta. Otherwise, it's almost like a bargaining tool. You know, it's like if I do more metta, then everyone will like me. I'll have lots and lots of friends. Yeah, that might happen, but not if that's your agenda. So it's about becoming agenda-less and doing good for the sake of doing good, because we know it's the right thing to do. It makes us feel good, right? That's what I was saying about, as a human being, we have the possibility to feel the consequences of our actions as felt experiences. We can actually sense whether the happiness that arises is wholesome or coarse. We can sense whether it's the kind of spiritual happiness arising that leads us forward on the path deeper into our meditation, or whether it's the kind of agitating happiness of the senses. We can experience this in our bodies, especially if we are embodied with the practice. So yeah, giving for the sake of giving in a beautiful way, because it's good. And then lastly, I recognize that behavior and language in how I've seen others behave. The Buddha talks about how he's free from fear in the various assemblies of beings due to blameless conduct and other factors of, and other factors. Yeah, I think that's right. You know, I mean, not to sort of laud myself in any way here, but I did notice with some gladness that recently I was invited to a dialogue with a senior nun, and that nun is very sharp, very fast-spoken, and really cuts through the BS, let's say, like a shot. And normally in the past, maybe 10 years ago, before I started giving public talks, I was terrified to talk anywhere. So there's no way I'd have sat up there with her. But even 5 years ago, probably I'd have had some doubts. But this time I went, and I was just so inspired to meet her in the first place. And then I sat with her and she challenged me in various ways. But I noticed that I was really confident in replying. Firstly, I was confident to be there, but then I was confident in my replies because I knew where I'm coming from. I know why I say the things I say. I know why I do the things I do. I have my own, experience that's led me to do things that way and express things that way. So I could answer in a calm and measured way that actually made a lot of sense to her. And she said, oh, yeah. So it was actually very nice. And I realized that that's because, something to do with that confidence that comes from living true to yourself in a way, ethically true to yourself. Yeah, you're able to turn up in different groups of people and speak from your own truth. Yeah. So authenticity, I guess. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for the discussion. There was one more sutta I wanted to flag. I don't know, is that helpful? Because if you're really keen on this subject of Kamma, I really would recommend you reading this sutta too. And this is the salt lump, and it's in the Anguttara Nikaya. Casey might know it. I think it's Anguttara 310, but I might be wrong. But I think it is Anguttara 310. It's called the lump of salt. And there the Buddha says there's actually no living of the holy life if we experience results identical to the causes. In other words, if we have to experience the results of our actions exactly as we planted those causes, the same amount of suffering that the cause would normally bring about, there'd be no living of the holy life. Because it's not only the past action that influences what we experience now, it's also our current state of mind. And the simile is that if you put a salt crystal in a big lake, you hardly notice the taste. If you put the salt crystal in a glass of water, it's really too salty to drink. So if that salt crystal stands for some bad karma from the past, and it meets a mind that is small like the glass, a small mind that's already irritated, that's really tired, it's going to come up with a lot more impact. It's going to make that water really unbearable to drink. Whereas if your mind is big, wide, expansive, full of loving kindness, full of compassion, and some memory or some karma from the past comes up that's not so pleasant, you're hardly going to notice it because it meets beautiful conditions in the present moment. And because of that, the holy life is possible to live. We don't have to experience the results of everything we've done in exactly the same intensity. There is a way out. If there wasn't, then it wouldn't be possible to transcend our karma. So that's very important to note. All right. So karma is not fate. To summarize, karma is not predetermined. Karma is ethical intention and action that we can generate every moment of our lives. Karma doesn't account for everything. There are many causes for the feelings we have in the present moment. And we don't have to experience the results of the karma in one. Karma is going to arise and pass fairly easily. And we're going to basically dilute the negative effects or the negative actions and the effects of those actions in the present moment. So it's a hopeful message, isn't it? Oh, we have a question. Last minute. Wow. 2 minutes before the end.
Oh.
Okay, I'll come to you. If anyone needs to leave, that's okay. But if you can, hold on. There's another question. And then we're going to do our closing. So, yeah. Can you come closer so they can hear you? Because I haven't got time. No, come closer, please.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
Otherwise, I'll have to come. Otherwise, I have to repeat it. We don't have too much time. Come.
Oh. I would like to ask about the karma of a cat, my cat.
Oh, can you hear this?
Can you hear? Because so this feral cat 5 years ago came to my doorstep, and it was very fertile. It wouldn't like allow anyone to see it, so it would dart out looking for food, like
Yeah.
So it took a year before it uttered any sound, and almost a year before it would allow anyone to see it. I would put food out, but now after 5 years, it's very comfortable.
Yeah.
It has the confidence, and I'm just will this cat eventually not become a cat in its next life because it's now getting a lot of attention?
Yeah.
And,
I think what you're doing is putting in some of the karma to give that cat a better rebirth, right? Because everything that happens around us is like new conditions. Cause and effect means the conditions we're creating now. So you're helping that cat by creating really good, loving conditions so that she or he,
it's the she
can relax and she can start to trust and start to feel that she's worth something. She's not going to get hurt
and she doesn't
by another animal.
Now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you're helping her. You can see that happening in this very life, right? We can see it happening to people, can't we?
Yeah.
Sometimes people grow up in the worst unpromising situations, really, really terrible situations, but they come in contact with wise friends or with some teaching that's going to help them, and we see how they change. Hopefully all of us can experience that to some degree.
So she won't come back as a cat?
We don't know. The Buddha didn't predict. But I think from what I understand, if animals live around humans, they pick up some of that, the good qualities. And even if she comes back as a cat, she'll come back as maybe a really happy, really fat and cozy, purring cat. right? So yeah, what you can know, you can't know the ultimate result of our actions, but what you can know is that you're seeing her get happier and happier, and that's going to continue. Okay, so that's really great. Yeah. Oh, thanks for that, because I think that's a real life example, isn't it? I'm sure most of us are concerned about our animals, and especially our cats after this talk. I mean, remember in the Buddha's day, I guess most of the cats were feral cats. You know, it's not like people had pets, I don't suppose. And you know, some of the behaviors of these animals might have been quite different then. Kedwin said her cat loved chanting and meditation. So yeah, I'm sure she's benefiting from your meditation. Excellent. So we're going to just end with a few words from Minori, and then I will let you know what's coming next. A lot of wonderful things are coming next. So,
Yeah, I'd like to say a few words about dana, generosity, because the giving develops wholesome qualities that form the foundation of our Dhamma practice. And the generosity can also be a practice of checking in deeply with us. So another reminder that Anukampa offers several ways that we can cultivate this beautiful quality of generosity, dana. So there you can do always a one-time donation, financial donation through our website. Or if you are financially capable, you can do a standing order with your bank, organizing with your bank. There are other ways. There's food donations, which are much needed. You can do it remotely. You don't have to go in if you can't. And you can do...
You have to if you can. Sorry, Minori.
Yeah, you much appreciate if you can, but if you can't, if you live far away, you can do it remote as well. And then you can do a supermarket deliveries. There is needed items list. So have a look and see what aligns with you. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I hope that was a lot of good food for thought, and I wish you well this moment and the next moment and the coming few days. I think tomorrow morning we have a metta meditation, do we? 9 o'clock GMT. We're in the winter time now. So if you can come to that, that's a very nice way for us to be together and to cultivate love and kindness as an emotion, as a quality of our hearts. And then next week, we still have the chanting and the Sutta class and even the metta, possibly. Please check the website. And then from the Monday, Ajahn Brahm will be here. Yay! So we're going to meet him in East Croydon and go to the talk in East Croydon, Thames Buddhist Vihara on Monday night. And then we're going up to Sheffield, Wednesday night talk in Sheffield. And what else? Then we have a talk in Birmingham on the Thursday, a talk in Oxford on the Friday, and a retreat. Many of you, or some of you, are coming to the retreat, I think. And then we have a weekend retreat also on the 28th and 29th of November. There's still some place on that. It's in Oxford. It's only it's a non-residential, so you have to get your own accommodation, at least for 1 or 2 nights. We hope he'll come back next year. He tends to come back and back and back. Well, he can, but I don't know when he dies if he'll come back at all. I don't know. So, oh yeah, our friend with the cat is very, very eager to do an auction at the Mercure Hotel. So she's brought a beautiful teddy bear who we've actually ordained as the first Samaneri bear in the UK. You might remember we had Venerable P.T. Sukha, the first Bhikkhuni bear. She's now 6 years as a Bhikkhuni. That means she's a Majjhima Bhikkhuni. She's she's like a middle non, which means she's kind of getting senior, right? And she ordained this other teddy bear, much bigger than her, as a as a novice. I'm glad some of you are laughing, not thinking we're crazy. Maybe both. And it was a very beautiful ceremony. I don't think we did all the precepts, but we definitely took the refuges. And yeah, she's got Ajahn Brahm like embroidered into her feet. Actually, our friend here with the cat, I don't like to say names because in case privacy and all, she already won her in an auction and she's very kindly offering her on. So anyway, we're going to have a bit of fun. If you don't like that kind of thing, it's okay. You can just watch and laugh. But I'm glad some of you are laughing because when I told Ajahn Brahm, he was so happy. He said, I'm glad you're having fun. You know, ordaining teddy bears. It's just a practice run. I'm ordaining a real person soon, but she looks like a teddy bear. Anyway, she does look like a teddy bear right now. Both of you do. So it was a practice run. And he said, oh, really? Did you? Can you send me the video? Because we took a little clip. And he said, can you send it to me? It was really cute. So we do like to play and be a little childlike in the monastic sangha, especially the more senior you get. You have to keep it real. You have to keep it light. So definitely the teddy bears find that true. All right. So most probably he'll come back next year if he's alive, right? We don't really ever know. Next year's a long time away. So I don't know he'll come this year until he's here. You know, after COVID, I just realized you really don't know. Yeah, you really, really don't know. So anyway, I'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Let's unmute you and we can wave goodbye.